Don't move. I'm hungry. Please don't send us away.
Come inside before someone else sees you.
She sat high near the barn.
Evelyn Harper. Open up! Shh, stay quiet.
What is it?
Proof.
Cowboy.
Don't move, the older girl whispers, her voice thin but sharp in the dark. The boy beside her shifts on the dirt and clutches his stomach. I'm hungry, he murmurs. Quiet, she snaps back, pressing her hand over his mouth. Gravel crunches somewhere beyond the barn wall. All three children freeze. The sound is slow and heavy, Boots stepping carefully across the ground like someone who already knows something is wrong. The lantern light appears first, dim and swinging. Then the tall shape of the cowboy rounds the corner of the barn. He stops when he hears the whispering. His head tilts slightly. Someone's there, he says calmly, his voice low and steady. Silence answers him. The girl pulls the younger boy and the smallest child closer behind an old stack of wood planks leaning against the barn. The lantern light shifts closer. The cowboy walks a few steps forward, boots crunching again. I ain't blind, he says quietly. Come on now. The boy trembles. The smallest child begins to whimper. The girl squeezes his shoulder hard. Don't make a sound, she breathes. The lantern glow grows brighter as the cowboy lifts it. His shadow stretches across the barn wall. For a long moment nobody moves. Then a weak voice finally breaks the silence. Please don't send us away. The cowboy lowers the lantern slowly toward the ground. The light spills across three small faces hiding in the dirt. They look thin, hollow, their clothes stiff with dust and cold. The youngest child grips the older girl's sleeve like he might disappear if he lets go. The cowboy studies them without speaking. Well, he says after a moment. You ain't thieves. The girl's eyes flash with fear anyway. She keeps herself between him and the two boys. The cowboy crouches down so the lantern sits lower. Where's your parents? He asks. The children stare at him without answering. The boy shifts again. His stomach growls loud enough for everyone to hear. The cowboy notices. You been out here long? He asks. Still no answer. The girl keeps watching him like he might lunge at any second. Did someone hurt you? The cowboy asks. Silence again. The lantern light flickers across their faces. The smallest child trembles and finally whispers something. Don't let him find us. The cowboy's expression tightens slightly. He leans forward just a little. Who? He asks quietly. The child shakes his head and presses his face into the girl's arm. The girl's voice comes out hard and quick. We didn't take nothing. The cowboy nods once. I didn't say you did. We'll leave, she says. Just don't tell nobody. The cowboy studies them longer now. The boy sways slightly where he sits. The cowboy notices the dirt under their fingernails, the cracked skin on their hands, the way their eyes keep darting toward the road beyond the barn. Something old stirs inside his chest. A memory he keeps buried deep. 3 children hiding. 3 children afraid. His jaw tightens. You hungry? He asks. The boy nods before the girl can stop him. She glares at him, but it's too late. The cowboy stands slowly. The lantern swings again. The children flinch when he moves. Easy, he says. I ain't chasing you. The girl narrows her eyes. Then what do you want? The cowboy looks toward the dark field beyond the barn and then back at them. His voice softens a little. Nothing. The wind moves through the boards of the barn, making the wood creak softly. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once and then goes quiet again. The cowboy reaches down and lifts the lantern. The light brightens the shadows around them. The children blink against it. The cowboy speaks again, his voice calm but firm. Come inside, he says. The girl hesitates. Why? The cowboy studies her face, seeing the stubborn fear there. He nods once toward the ranch house in the distance where a single dim window glows. Because if someone else rides past tonight, he says quietly, they won't ask questions first. The girl looks at the two boys beside her. The older one swallows hard. The smallest child is shaking now from the cold. The cowboy turns slightly and gestures toward the barn door. Before someone else sees you, he says. For a moment none of them move. Then the girl slowly stands, pulling the boys with her. They stay a few steps behind him as he walks to the barn door. The lantern light sways across the wooden walls. The cowboy pushes the door open. The hinges groan softly. Warm light from inside spills across the dirt floor. The girl hesitates again in the doorway. The cowboy steps inside and sets the lantern down on a nearby table. He glances back toward the dark field once more. Then he looks at the children waiting outside. You coming, he says quietly, or you planning to freeze out there? The girl exhales slowly. Then she leads the boys through the door. The barn door creaks shut behind them. The barn door closes behind them and the cowboy leads the children across the dark yard toward the ranch house. The older girl keeps both boys close to her sides as they walk, watching the cowboy's back like she expects him to turn around and change his mind. The porch boards creak when he climbs the steps. He opens the door and a warm yellow light spills out from the kitchen. The children hesitate in the doorway. The smell of bread and coffee hangs in the air. The cowboy gestures toward the table. Sit. The boy doesn't wait for permission again. He rushes forward and climbs into a chair, staring at the loaf of bread sitting on the counter like it might disappear. The cowboy cuts thick slices and places them on the table. The boy grabs one and begins eating so fast he nearly chokes. Crumbs scatter across the wood. The cowboy pours milk into 3 cups and slides them across the table. Slow down, he says. The boy doesn't answer. The girl sits stiffly across from the cowboy. Her eyes move across the room, measuring the door, the windows, every corner. Her hand slowly closes around the handle of a kitchen knife lying near the bread. The cowboy notices but says nothing. The youngest child climbs onto the chair beside the boy and stares at the bread like he isn't sure if he's allowed to touch it. The cowboy nudges a piece closer to him. Eat, he says quietly. The little boy takes it carefully and begins chewing. The girl finally speaks. You gonna sell us? The cowboy pauses while pouring more milk. Sell you? She tightens her grip on the knife. That's what men do. The boy keeps eating but his eyes flick up nervously. The cowboy sets the pitcher down. His face hardens slightly. No one's selling anything here. The girl studies him, searching for the lie she expects to hear. Then why feed us, she asks. Because you're hungry. People don't do things for nothing. The cowboy leans back in his chair. Sometimes they do. The boy wipes his mouth with his sleeve and whispers to the girl. Can I have more? She hesitates before nodding. The cowboy pushes the bread toward him. The boy grabs another piece. The room grows quiet for a moment except for chewing and the soft tick of a clock on the wall. The cowboy watches them carefully. What's your names? He asks. The girl answers quickly. Don't matter. Everything matters. She shakes her head. Not to people like you. The cowboy folds his hands on the table. You don't know a thing about people like me. The boy swallows hard. I'm Jacob, he blurts out. The girl glares at him but it's too late. The cowboy nods once. All right, Jacob. He looks at the younger child. And you? Eli, the boy whispers. The cowboy turns back to the girl. That leaves you. She stares at him a long moment before answering. Clara. The cowboy nods slowly. Clara. The clock ticks again. Outside, the wind brushes softly against the house walls. The cowboy leans forward slightly. Where's your folks? Clara's expression shuts down immediately. Jacob stares at the table. Eli chews slower now. No one answers. The cowboy waits. Your father around? He asks. Clara shakes her head once. No, where is he? Jacob's voice drops to a whisper. Gone. The cowboy studies their faces. Gone how? Clara's jaw tightens. They took him. The cowboy sits still. Who took him? Jacob speaks quietly while staring at the bread. The Caldwell men. The cowboy's eyes narrow slightly. Clara continues before he can ask more. He worked their land. Doing what? Farming. Then what happened? Clara's fingers tighten on the knife again. He said they were stealing everything. The cowboy says nothing. Jacob looks up now, his voice shaking. He said the sheriff was helping them. Clara nods. The banker too. She pauses, then adds softly, the governor's brother. The room grows heavy with silence. The cowboy's jaw tightens. Everyone in this region knows the Caldwell family. Their land stretches farther than most towns. Their money runs deeper than the courts. People whisper their name and then quickly change the subject. Jacob's voice cracks again. Dad said he was gonna tell people. Clara's eyes stay locked on the cowboy. Next morning he was gone. The cowboy looks down at the table for a moment. And your mother? He asks quietly. Clara's voice softens slightly for the first time. She ran. Ran where? Everywhere. Jacob wipes his nose with his sleeve. She said they'd come for us too. The cowboy lifts his head slowly. Where is she now? Clara finally looks away. Her voice drops. She told us to hide. The cowboy leans forward slightly. Where? Clara swallows hard. Near your barn. The cowboy freezes. My barn? Jacob nods slowly. She said you'd help. The cowboy's expression darkens with something deeper than confusion. Clara continues watching him carefully. But she never came back. The clock on the wall keeps ticking. The cowboy slowly leans back again. He knows that family. Everyone does. And nobody crosses them. The kitchen clock keeps ticking after Clara's last words. The cowboy sits still, elbows on the table, watching the three children like the room suddenly grew smaller. Jacob chews the last corner of bread slowly now. Eli leans against Clara's arm, half asleep but still clutching the cup of milk with both hands. Clara keeps her eyes on the cowboy. The silence stretches until the smallest boy shifts and slides from his chair. He walks around the table and grabs the edge of the cowboy's coat. His small fingers twist the fabric tight. She said hide near the barn, Eli whispers. The cowboy looks down at him. Why my barn? He asks quietly. Eli shrugs without letting go. She said you're the only one who won't lie. The words land heavy in the room. The cowboy freezes for a moment. Clara watches the change in his face. Something sharp moves behind his eyes, something old. He slowly reaches down and rests his hand on the boy's shoulder. Your mama said that? He asks. Eli nods. Jacob finally looks up again. She said you were different. The cowboy exhales slowly through his nose. Different how? Jacob shrugs. She didn't say. Clara leans forward now. She just said your name. The cowboy's eyes move to her. What name? Clara studies him carefully, measuring whether she should say it. The boy Eli presses closer to the cowboy's coat. The girl finally speaks. Daniel. The cowboy goes still again. No one in this town uses that name much anymore. Most people just call him the rancher, or the quiet cowboy at the edge of the valley. Hearing it from a child's mouth pulls something tight in his chest. He clears his throat once. Your mama tell you anything else? Clara hesitates before answering. She said if anything happened to her, we should find you. The cowboy's voice lowers. What happened to her? Jacob looks toward the window like someone might be standing outside. She left us near the road last night, he says quietly. Said she had to go meet someone. Clara nods slowly. She said we should wait until morning. But morning came, Jacob whispers. Eli's voice trembles. She didn't. The cowboy looks away toward the stove for a moment. The flame flickers low under the kettle. The room smells faintly of smoke and warm bread. When he looks back, Clara is still watching him closely. What's your mama's name? He asks carefully. Clara's lips press together. For a moment she looks like she might refuse again. Then she answers in a small voice. Evelyn Harper. The cowboy's face drains of color. The name hits him like a hammer he wasn't ready for. The chair creaks as he shifts back. Clara notices immediately. You know her. It isn't a question. The cowboy stares at the table a moment before speaking. Yeah. Jacob leans forward. You knew our mom? The cowboy nods slowly but doesn't look up yet. Memories slide through his mind whether he wants them or not. A woman standing on courthouse steps with papers in her hand. A crowd whispering around her. Men watching from the shadows with cold smiles. Evelyn Harper had walked into town years ago and started asking questions nobody wanted answered. She had found land records buried deep in county books. Deeds changed overnight. Farms stolen. Families pushed out. And one name appeared again and again across those records. Caldwell. The biggest landowners in the valley. The family who decided which sheriff kept his badge and which judge kept his seat. Evelyn had tried to expose them. For a while people listened. Then the threats began. Then the silence. The cowboy finally lifts his head again. Clara studies his face carefully. What happened to her? Jacob asks. The cowboy's voice is low. Last I heard she disappeared. Eli grips his coat tighter. She's not gone, he whispers. Clara nods quickly. She's tough. The cowboy doesn't answer right away. Instead he looks toward the kitchen window. Outside the yard sits dark and quiet under the night sky. The barn stands like a black wall against the field. For a moment the room feels colder. Clara breaks the silence. You promised to help her, didn't you? The cowboy looks back at her slowly. What makes you say that? Clara shrugs. Mom said you were the only one who believed her. The cowboy exhales once. Believing ain't the same as helping. Jacob frowns. What does that mean? The cowboy rubs his hand across his jaw. Means sometimes people don't do what they should. Clara's eyes narrow. You mean you didn't help? The cowboy doesn't argue. The silence that follows says enough. Clara leans back in her chair slowly. So she was wrong about you. The words hang in the air. The cowboy looks at the three children sitting in his kitchen. Dirt still on their clothes. Fear still in their eyes. He hears Evelyn's voice in his memory again, sharp and stubborn. People deserve the truth. The sound of an engine breaks the silence. All four heads turn toward the window at the same time. Light suddenly washes across the yard outside. Headlights cutting through the dark. A truck rolls slowly up the road toward the ranch house. The cowboy stands immediately. Clara's voice drops to a whisper. Who is that? The cowboy watches the truck through the glass. The shape of the vehicle becomes clear as it turns toward the house. A star-shaped badge painted on the door catches the light. The cowboy's jaw tightens. Sheriff. Jacob's chair scrapes softly as he stands. Eli clings to Clara again. The truck engine rumbles outside as it pulls to a stop near the gate. The cowboy looks at the children. Then back toward the window. The headlights stay on, flooding the yard in pale white light. A door slams outside. Boots hit gravel. The cowboy's voice turns quiet and serious. Don't say another word. The cowboy's last words hang in the air as the heavy knock slams against the front door. The children freeze. Another knock follows, harder this time, the wood rattling in the frame. A voice outside calls out sharp and impatient. Open up! The cowboy turns to the children immediately. His voice drops low and fast. Hide! Clara doesn't hesitate. She grabs Jacob's sleeve and pulls him toward the far corner of the kitchen. The cowboy moves quickly to the rug near the pantry door and pulls it aside, revealing the square cellar hatch built into the floorboards. He lifts it just enough. Down there, he whispers. Eli stares at the dark hole with wide eyes. It's okay, the cowboy murmurs. Another pounding knock shakes the door again. You deaf in there, the voice shouts. Clara pushes Jacob toward the opening. Go. The boy slides down first. Eli follows, gripping the edge until his feet find the ladder. Clara lowers herself last. The cowboy leans down. Stay quiet. Clara nods once in the dim light below. He closes the hatch gently and drags the rug back into place just as another knock rattles the door. The cowboy straightens and walks across the kitchen slowly, steadying his breathing. The knocking comes again. I know you're home, the voice says. The cowboy reaches the door and opens it. Sheriff Cole stands on the porch with one hand resting on his belt. His badge glints in the porch light. His smile is thin and crooked. Evenin', the sheriff says. The cowboy nods once. Sheriff. Cole steps inside without waiting to be invited. His boots track dust across the floorboards as his eyes sweep across the room. Little late for visitors, the cowboy says. The sheriff shrugs. Town's got problems tonight. He strolls farther into the kitchen, glancing at the bread still sitting on the table. His eyes pause on the 3 cups of milk. You expecting company? He asks casually. The cowboy leans against the counter. Just finished supper. The sheriff picks up a piece of bread and examines it before setting it down again. You seen 3 kids run through here? He asks suddenly. The cowboy answers without pause. No. Cole studies his face. 2 boys and a girl. Haven't seen them. The sheriff walks slowly across the kitchen, peering toward the hallway and the back door. The house creaks quietly around them. Beneath the floorboards the children hold their breath in the dark cellar. Cole turns back toward the cowboy. You sure? He asks. Sure enough. The sheriff's smile returns, but it doesn't reach his eyes. Funny thing about this land, he says. The cowboy folds his arms. What's that? Cole steps closer, lowering his voice slightly. Things disappear here. The cowboy doesn't move. That's so. Cole nods slowly. People too. The kitchen clock ticks loudly between them. The sheriff glances again toward the table. You eat alone every night? He asks. Most nights. Cole chuckles under his breath. Quiet life out here. That's the idea. The sheriff walks toward the window and looks out at the dark field. You hear anything strange tonight? He asks. No whispers near the barn? The cowboy's eyes narrow slightly. Just the wind. Cole turns around slowly. Wind don't hide children. The cowboy shrugs. Then I guess I ain't heard it. The sheriff studies him a long moment. The silence stretches until the ticking clock seems louder than before. Finally Cole exhales and adjusts his hat. Well, he says. If you do happen to see them, he lets the sentence trail off. The cowboy doesn't answer. Cole walks toward the door. His boots thud heavily across the floor. He pauses at the doorway and glances back. Runaways don't last long around here, he says. The cowboy's voice stays calm. Kids shouldn't be running. The sheriff smirks slightly. These ones belong to somebody. The cowboy's jaw tightens. Kids don't belong to anybody. Cole opens the door. Cool night air drifts into the kitchen. He steps out onto the porch and stops again before heading down the steps. His voice carries back through the doorway. "If they show up," he says slowly, "they belong to the Caldwell estate now." The truck door slams a moment later. The engine roars to life and headlights sweep across the windows again as the vehicle pulls away down the road. The cowboy stands in the doorway until the sound of the engine fades into the distance. Then he closes the door quietly and locks it. The kitchen feels heavier now. The cowboy walks back across the floor and pulls the rug aside again. He opens the cellar hatch. 3 frightened faces stare up at him from the darkness below. Clara speaks first. What did he mean? The cowboy doesn't answer right away. He just looks at them, something grim settling in his eyes. Finally he speaks in a low voice. "Means you're not just hiding," he says. The children climb slowly out of the cellar. The cowboy closes the hatch behind them. Clara's voice trembles slightly. "Then what are we?" The cowboy looks toward the dark window where the sheriff's truck disappeared. His voice comes out quiet and heavy. "Hunted." The cowboy's last word hangs in the kitchen like smoke. "Hunted." Clara looks at him, trying to decide if he is telling the truth or trying to scare them. Jacob grips the edge of the table. Eli presses himself against Clara's side again. The cowboy moves slowly to the door and grabs his lantern from the hook beside it. He lights the wick with a match and the soft glow spreads across the room. Clara watches him closely. "Where are you going?" she asks. The cowboy lifts the lantern and nods toward the back door. "Outside." Jacob frowns. "Now." The cowboy opens the door and cool night air slips inside. "Come on." Clara hesitates only a second before guiding the boys after him. The yard lies quiet under the dark sky. The barn sits silent behind them. The lantern light swings as the cowboy walks toward the back of the house. The children follow a few steps behind. Their shoes crunch softly on the dirt path. They pass a row of old fence posts and a rusted wagon wheel leaning against the shed. Clara keeps watching the tree line like she expects someone to appear from the shadows. "Where are we going?" Jacob asks. The cowboy lifts the lantern toward a dark shape ahead. "The well." They reach it a moment later. The old stone well sits behind the house near a patch of tall grass. The wooden cover creaks softly when the wind brushes against it. The cowboy sets the lantern on the ground and rests his hands on the edge of the stones. The children gather close, staring down into the black opening beneath the cover. Clara breaks the silence first. "Why here?" she asks. The cowboy looks into the darkness of the well like he is seeing something else entirely. "Because it's quiet." Eli crouches beside the stones and peers into the dark hole. "Is there water?" The cowboy nods slightly. "Deep down." Jacob kicks a small rock across the dirt. "You said you knew our mom." The cowboy exhales slowly. "Yeah." Clara steps closer. "How?" The lantern light flickers across his face. "She came to my ranch years ago," he says. "Asking questions." Jacob tilts his head. "About what?" "Land." Clara's eyes sharpen. "The Caldwells." The cowboy nods once. "Your mama was brave." Clara's expression hardens instead of softening. "You knew her?" "Yes." Her eyes burn in the lantern light. "Then why didn't you help her?" The question lands heavy. The cowboy doesn't answer right away. The wind moves through the tall grass around the well. Eli drops a pebble into the opening and they all listen to it fall. It takes several seconds before the faint splash echoes up from below. Finally the cowboy speaks. His voice is quiet. "I was a coward." Jacob looks up quickly. "What do you mean?" The cowboy keeps his gaze on the dark well. "Means I knew what was happening." Clara crosses her arms. "And you did nothing." The cowboy nods slowly. "That's about the size of it." The silence stretches again. Eli tugs gently on Clara's sleeve. Are they gonna take us? He whispers. Clara looks at the cowboy. The cowboy lifts his head and stares out toward the distant hills beyond the ranch. They'll try, he says. Jacob swallows. Why? Clara answers before the cowboy can. Because they want what Mom found. The cowboy turns his head slowly. What did she find? Clara studies him carefully. For the first time tonight she seems unsure. Jacob glances at her nervously. Eli keeps watching the well. Clara finally speaks. Proof. The cowboy raises an eyebrow. Proof of what? Clara steps closer to the well and places her hand on the old stones. That they stole the land. Jacob nods quickly. Dad said the records were fake. Clara continues. Mom found the real ones. The cowboy leans forward slightly. Where are they? Clara looks down at the ground near the base of the well. Her voice drops to a whisper. They've been looking everywhere. The cowboy follows her gaze. Looking for what? Clara's finger traces a small circle in the dirt beside the stones. Documents. Jacob shifts nervously. Mom said if they got them back nobody would ever know the truth. The cowboy crouches beside the well and studies the ground. The dirt around the stones looks slightly disturbed. So where are they? He asks quietly. Clara looks straight at him now. The lantern light flickers across her face. Her voice is barely louder than the wind moving through the grass. Buried. The cowboy's eyes narrow. Where? Clara slowly lifts her hand and points down beside the well. Right at the patch of loose dirt near the stones. The cowboy stares at the spot for a long moment. Then he exhales slowly and reaches for a shovel leaning against the fence nearby. The metal scrapes softly against the ground as he drags it closer. Jacob watches with wide eyes. Eli grips Clara's sleeve again. The cowboy presses the shovel into the dirt beside the well. The blade sinks easily into the soil. Clara steps back as he begins to dig. None of them speak while the shovel moves through the earth under the quiet night sky. The shovel bites into the dirt beside the well again and again. The metal edge cuts through the loose soil with a dull scrape that echoes softly through the quiet yard. The lantern on the ground throws a weak yellow glow across the stones, the grass, and the three children standing close together behind the cowboy. Clara watches every movement of the shovel. Jacob shifts his weight nervously. Eli clings to her arm and stares at the growing hole like something might crawl out of it. The cowboy digs deeper, tossing clumps of dirt aside. The soil here is softer than the rest of the yard, like it was turned not long ago. After a few minutes he pauses and pushes the shovel in again. This time it hits something solid with a hollow knock. The cowboy stops moving. Jacob leans forward. What was that? The cowboy kneels and brushes the dirt away with his hands. The lantern light catches the edge of metal under the soil. Clara's voice tightens. That's it. The cowboy clears more dirt away until the shape becomes clear. A small metal box, dull and scratched, buried just beneath the ground. He grips the sides and pulls it free. Dirt falls from the corners as he lifts it into the lantern light. Eli whispers, "Is that Mom's?" Clara nods slowly. The cowboy sets the box on the ground beside the well and wipes his hands on his jeans. For a moment he just stares at it like he already knows what sits inside. Jacob crouches closer. Open it. The cowboy hesitates. Clara notices immediately. What's wrong? She asks. The cowboy exhales slowly. Once this opens, things don't stay quiet anymore. Clara's voice turns sharp. They weren't quiet already. The cowboy nods once. Then he flips the small latch on the metal lid. The box creaks open. Inside are stacks of papers wrapped in oilcloth. The cowboy unwraps the cloth carefully. The lantern light falls across faded documents and folded letters. Clara kneels beside him. Those are them, she says softly. The cowboy picks up the first paper and studies it. His eyes move slowly across the lines of writing. Jacob leans closer. What does it say? The cowboy's jaw tightens. Land deeds. He flips another page. Property transfers. Another sheet follows. Court filings. Clara watches his face closely. Is it proof? The cowboy lifts a different document. This one carries several signatures at the bottom. His expression hardens. It's more than proof. Jacob frowns. What do you mean? The cowboy taps the paper lightly. These show how the Caldwells took farms that didn't belong to them. Clara nods. Mom said they changed the records. The cowboy flips to another page and points to a name. Here. Jacob squints at the paper. Who's that? The cowboy answers quietly. Your father. Clara's breath catches. What does it say? The cowboy reads a line slowly. Land seized for unpaid debt. Clara shakes her head immediately. That's a lie. The cowboy nods. Yeah. He lifts another document from the stack. This one carries a different seal at the bottom. His voice turns colder. And here's the sheriff's signature approving it. Jacob's eyes widen. Sheriff Cole? Same one who knocked on my door tonight. Eli looks from face to face. Why would he do that? The cowboy places the paper back in the box. Because men like him don't work for the law. Clara answers quietly. They work for the Caldwells. The cowboy nods again. He pulls out another folded letter and opens it slowly. The handwriting inside is tight and hurried. Clara leans closer. That's Mom's writing. The cowboy reads the first few lines silently. His face grows heavier with every sentence. Jacob whispers, "What does it say?" The cowboy lowers the paper. Your mother found records tying the Caldwells to more than stolen land. Clara's voice shakes slightly. What else? The cowboy lifts another page from the box and holds it in the lantern light. Several names appear in neat columns beside property records and dates. Farmers who disappeared, he says quietly. Jacob swallows hard. Disappeared? The cowboy nods. After refusing to sign their land away. Eli's small voice trembles. Like Dad? The cowboy doesn't answer that question directly. Instead, he closes the box halfway and exhales slowly. This could burn the whole county down. Clara studies him. Is that good? The cowboy shakes his head slowly. It's dangerous. Jacob glances toward the dark road beyond the ranch. Dangerous for who? The cowboy looks at the three children beside him. Everyone's standing here. The wind shifts through the grass near the well, carrying the distant sound of engines somewhere far off in the valley. Clara hears it first. Her head turns toward the road. Do you hear that? The cowboy listens carefully. The sound grows louder, more than one engine now. Headlights begin to glow faintly through the trees near the road. Jacob's voice drops. That's not one truck. The cowboy closes the metal box and stands slowly. The rumble of engines spreads across the quiet land as several vehicles turn onto the ranch road at once. Clara grips the edge of the well stones. They found us. The cowboy watches the approaching lights with steady eyes. Looks that way. Eli presses against Clara again. What do we do? The cowboy reaches down and picks up the metal box. The engines grow louder. Headlights multiply in the darkness. Several trucks roll slowly toward the ranch house, their lights cutting across the fields like knives. Clara whispers, "Who are they?" The cowboy answers without looking away from the road. The people who own this town. The headlights sweep across the yard as the cowboy steps onto the porch, holding the metal box tightly under one arm. Trucks crunch through the gravel and stop near the barn, engines rumbling low. Expensive coats step out into the night, collars turned up against the cold. Cold smiles spread across faces that have never known kindness. One of the men pushes forward, voice clipped and commanding. "You're harboring stolen property." The cowboy doesn't flinch. His hand rests lightly on the rifle leaning against the porch post. "Children aren't property," he says. The man laughs quietly, the sound hard and sharp. "Everything is property if we say so," he replies. Clara steps behind him, small and tense. "Please don't die," she whispers just above the wind. The cowboy glances over his shoulder at her, calm. "Then I guess they'd better bring more men," he mutters. One of the men shifts, looking at the others, then back at him. "You're one man," he says. The cowboy leans slightly forward. "Then I guess I'm all they'll get." The older girl tightens her fists at her sides. "We're not leaving," she says quietly. Jacob's small voice trembles. "They could kill you." The cowboy shakes his head slowly. "Maybe. But they won't touch them. Not while I stand." The men exchange glances. Their breath fogs in the cold night air. One of them steps closer. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." The cowboy's expression hardens. "I understand perfectly. I know men like you. Men who take without asking. Men who lie to keep their power. You'll go through me first." A pause stretches over the gravel. Engines hum softly behind the men. The cowboy steps down from the porch. "Back up," he says quietly. The lead man smirks. "You're bluffing." The cowboy rests one hand on the rifle, the other brushing the metal box closer to his side. "Call it what you want." Clara glances at Eli and Jacob, holding their hands tightly. "They're not going to leave," she says softly. "Doesn't matter," the cowboy replies. "They won't get to you." The wind rustles through the tall grass along the fence line. The men shift their weight, uncertain, but still confident. "You think you can stop us all?" the leader asks. "I've done worse," the cowboy answers quietly. He lifts the rifle slowly, just enough to catch the reflection of the moon on the barrel. The men laugh again, but it's sharper now, edged with tension. Clara presses her forehead to the cowboy's back, whispering again. "Please." The cowboy nods slightly. "I'm not leaving you." One of the men mutters under his breath. "This is foolish." The cowboy steps forward another pace. "Then maybe it's your foolishness you'll regret." The older girl studies his face. "You'll have to fight them all." "Then I guess I better be ready," he says. Jacob swallows hard, clutching the side of the porch. The lead man gestures at the others. "Bring it in. One way or another." Engines hum again. The wind cuts through the yard. The cowboy rests his hands lightly on the rifle. His eyes sweep across the men, cold and steady. Clara's whisper comes again. "Don't let them touch us." The cowboy looks down at her. "They won't," he says. A faint pause stretches, broken only by the soft scrape of boots on gravel. The men smile, each certain in their advantage. The cowboy exhales slowly, his gaze shifting between the children, the metal box, and the darkened trucks beyond. "Then let's see," he mutters under his breath, "who really owns this night." The air hangs heavy with tension, the quiet before a storm. A single truck door closes. Engines hum low, men laugh, and the ranch yard waits. The cowboy adjusts his stance. "If they want them," he says, "they'll have to go through me first." The three children huddle behind him, eyes wide but steadying. The night stretches. Gravel shifts under boots. The wind whispers through the grass. And the first shot of confrontation is only moments away. The night explodes all at once. A gunshot cracks through the yard, sharp and immediate. The cowboy ducks slightly behind the porch rail, one hand on the rifle, the other gripping the metal box. Clara huddles against him, Jacob presses close to her, and Eli clings to her leg. The Caldwell men respond quickly, firing from the gravel, their silhouettes sharp under the headlights. Sparks fly as bullets hit the porch boards and the dry grass around them. The cowboy returns fire, careful and precise, not aiming to kill but to keep them pinned back. The barn door rattles violently as another volley hits the wood. Flames lick the edges where the gunfire strikes, small at first, then spreading quickly, climbing the dry boards. Smoke begins curling into the night sky. Clara's eyes widen. "The barn," she shouts, pulling Jacob behind her. The cowboy keeps moving, circling around the porch to cover the children. Bullets crack against the fence posts. The fire casts long, flickering shadows across the yard, dancing over the faces of men and children alike. The cowboy ducks low behind the ladder, leaning against the barn, pulling a small tape recorder from his coat pocket. He presses record and sets it carefully on the ground, hidden beneath the lantern light. The men do not notice, too busy shouting and firing. One of the Caldwells yells over the chaos. "Stop hiding! Where's the proof?" The cowboy keeps low. His voice carries over the sharp pops of gunfire. "I told you, it's mine to find first." Another burst of gunfire rattles the barn boards. Sparks fly. Smoke swirls around the men's boots. The cowboy edges closer to the barn wall, letting the tape recorder catch every word. One of the men kicks a lantern, sending it rolling across the dirt. It smashes, flames leaping higher as the fuel catches. The fire spreads faster now, the heat bending the shadows across the yard. The men panic, yelling at one another, cursing, trying to find the box. The cowboy ducks, watching them with steady eyes. "You think anyone will believe you?" one of them shouts at him. The cowboy's voice cuts over the roar of flames and gunfire. "Everyone will." Clara peeks from behind him. "What are you doing?" she asks, voice trembling. "Recording," he says, eyes never leaving the chaos. "Every lie, every order, every crime." Jacob swallows hard, gripping Clara's sleeve. Eli whimpers softly, hiding against the cowboy's leg. Bullets hit the metal box, but it remains untouched, the tape recorder whirring quietly beneath the debris. The Caldwells shout, trying to intimidate him, circling around the fire, but the cowboy holds his ground. "You can't hide this," one man says angrily. "It'll ruin everything." The cowboy tilts his head slightly. "That's the point." Another flare of fire lights up the yard. Smoke burns their eyes, but still the cowboy stays low, calm. The children huddle closer, faces streaked with dirt and fear, watching the fire twist across the barn boards. Screams and shouts echo as the flames reach higher. The cowboy steps forward just enough to hold the rifle steady, watching, waiting. Hidden, the tape recorder captures every confession, every threat, every lie. The Caldwells' bravado cracks as they argue, pointing fingers, shouting over one another. The barn creaks, groaning under the growing heat, and the smell of smoke fills the night. The cowboy exhales, eyes scanning each of the men. "This is it," he murmurs to the children, the truth burns brighter than their fear. Sparks fall near the children, but the cowboy moves quickly to shield them. Clara's voice trembles. "It's all going to come out." He nods once, never taking his eyes off the men. "It already is." Flames climb higher now, licking the roof, shadows stretching across the yard in violent, flickering shapes. The Caldwells are trapped in their own chaos, shouting, revealing their crimes to the night. The cowboy steps back toward the porch, rifle ready, the tape recorder quietly capturing the unraveling of their power. Every shout, every threat, every confession becomes evidence. The children watch the fire light up the night sky, hearts pounding, yet safe behind him. He glances at them. "Stay close. Don't move." The wind shifts, sending sparks flying across the grass, and the night air smells of smoke and brimstone. The barn moans under the flames. The cowboy's eyes stay sharp, calm, methodical. Every shot fired, every lie revealed, every confession is recorded. This night will not be forgotten. The Caldwells stumble, shouting and cursing, exposing everything as the fire rages behind them. The cowboy breathes slowly, steady. He's not surrendering. Not tonight. Not ever. The children cling to him, their eyes wide in the glow. He glances at the tape recorder one last time. It whirs quietly beneath the lantern light, capturing every word. And somewhere in the chaos, the truth begins to rise above the flames. The first rays of sunlight cut through the smoke and ash that still clings to the yard. The barn smolders, its charred boards sending thin wisps of gray into the cold morning air. The cowboy stands on the porch, watching the children huddle close behind him. Clara's hair is streaked with soot, Jacob's shirt torn at the shoulder, Eli still clinging to her side. Engines hum again in the distance, but these aren't the Caldwells this time. Federal vehicles roll down the dirt road toward the ranch, their sirens low but urgent. Agents step out quickly, badges catching the morning light, rifles slung but ready. The cowboy lowers his own rifle slowly, letting the children step out beside him. "Who are they?" Jacob asks quietly. The cowboy glances back at the burned barn. "The people who actually care about the law." One agent approaches, nodding toward the cowboy. "We received reports of serious corruption, missing persons, and evidence of political crimes. Is that correct?" The cowboy lifts the metal box, holding it steady. "This is part of it." Clara steps closer. "And the tape," the cowboy adds, nodding toward the recorder he had left hidden in the ashes. One of the agents bends down and lifts it, checking quickly. "This is all documented?" he asks. The cowboy nods. "Every word." The agents glance at the children, then at the ruined barn, then back at the cowboy. "You've done a lot here," one says quietly. The sheriff's vehicles are nowhere to be seen, and the yard is silent except for the hum of federal engines. Another agent speaks. "This will destroy half the state government if it reaches the right offices." Clara grips the cowboy's hand tightly. "Are we safe now?" she asks, voice trembling. He squeezes her hand back gently. "For the first time, maybe," he says. Jacob peers up at him. "What happens to them?" The cowboy's eyes flick toward the burned barn, toward the empty trucks, toward the distant hills. "They'll be held accountable." Finally. Eli peeks from behind Clara's leg. "And us?" The cowboy bends slightly to look him in the eyes. "You get to keep living. You get to keep your family." Clara studies him silently for a long moment. "Did you mean to save us?" she asks. The cowboy shrugs lightly, letting a small smile brush his lips. "I did what had to be done." The agents begin taking statements, photographing the letters, the deeds, the court records, and the scorched barn remains. The children watch as men in suits carefully examine everything, cataloging evidence. The morning sun casts long shadows across the yard, revealing the depth of destruction, but also the victory. Clara's small voice breaks the quiet. "You really did it. You stopped them." The cowboy shakes his head slowly. "We stopped them. The truth did that. I just made sure it survived the night." Jacob takes a deep breath, looking around at the agents and the burned structures. "So the Caldwells, they're finished?" The cowboy's gaze sweeps the yard, then rests on the distant hills. "For now," he says. Clara leans against him slightly, brushing soot from her sleeve. "Do we ever get to go home?" The cowboy glances at the small group, then at the land stretching around them. This is your home now. Safe." The children exchange a look, a quiet understanding passing between them. The hum of federal vehicles and the voices of agents mix with the crackle of lingering embers from the barn. The cowboy lets the children step forward, hand in hand, their faces catching the first full light of day. Jacob glances at him one last time. "Thank you," he whispers. Clara smiles faintly. "For everything." The cowboy nods quietly, keeping his expression steady. "You don't need to thank me. Just stay alive. Remember what matters." The wind rustles through the field beyond the house, carrying smoke and the faint sound of engines. Eli tugs on Clara's hand. "Can we play now?" Clara nods. The cowboy watches them step into the yard, running carefully around the scorched remnants of the barn. Sunlight touches their hair, their clothes, their small faces filled with cautious smiles. The agents work steadily in the background, collecting evidence, taking notes, making phone calls. The cowboy stays on the porch, the metal box at his side, the tape recorder packed safely. The air feels lighter now, though the memory of the night still lingers. Clara's voice carries to him over the morning hush. It's finally over. He watches her and the boys run, feeling a small weight lift from his chest. For now, he mutters, almost to himself. The sun climbs higher, casting long shadows across the yard, highlighting the burned wood, the soft green fields beyond, and the small group of children beginning to understand freedom for the first time in years. The cowboy leans against the porch rail, silent, letting the morning stretch around him, the wind softening, the smoke lifting, the world feeling like it might be right again.